like all those things happening, you probably didn't have much of an understanding before they happened of like, oh, these places are here. Okay, you know, I'm here now.
Oh yeah.
Whereas now, I mean, is everything so public of, this person's committed, or this is happening, and this is happening.
Oh yeah.
So
There was none of that. It was very, I mean, that week my parents had to like Western Union me $20 to get me through the next week. You know, it was the old days for sure. But pretty fascinating stuff. So that was a really exciting time. And then, you know,
well, let me pause you there, because before we get run away from it, to show this earlier, and I just thought it was a cool picture. So I did find this. I'm pretty ignorant on what all is going on here, but it's seemingly, and I'm sure you maybe remember this.
So I was a sophomore. I was a point guard, and basically it was a district final, and you know it's better to be lucky than good, right? I banked in what would be a 3-pointer now, with just a couple seconds left. We had a really great shooter. We had a over 1,000-point scorer for high school on our team, and so of course they're marking her like crazy, and time's running out and someone's got to take the shot, so you take the shot, and it was pretty awesome. It was fun. Yeah.
I just the picture, you're not in the picture, but I can imagine just like the moment. So I just wanted to share that. I thought that was great. Yeah.
And well, I don't know if you go back to that picture, 22 is a senior on the team. And she started and I came off the bench, but I was a good player, so I'd earned my minutes, and you can see how excited she is, despite the fact that she probably really, really wanted to be in the game at that point in time. But it's a pretty awesome team picture when you look at it, actually.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's definitely a moment. I'm digging through some old newspaper stuff. Again, another of a different era. I'm trying to think the last time I actually have held a proper newspaper. It's been a while. But I'm very thankful for like the documentation, even not only just of records, but just of moments like that.
Yeah.
So very cool.
Very cool.
So jumping ahead to getting to Wisconsin, as you mentioned, your head coach is Greg Ryan, which I think is just kind of a funny connection. I think the soccer world's all pretty small at the end of the day, especially in these early years. You're also joining a team where, like you had said, they were on the rise, but hadn't quite had a big run yet. I think they played one national tournament before you had shown up, and so your freshman year, y'all make a Final Four appearance, and seemingly, I don't know if this is totally true, or maybe I'm connecting too many dots, but seemingly, if you have a good game against UNC, that just like puts you into another stratosphere. And so, I have a couple clips here as well, and just the quotes from Anson is really funny for me to hear, because you see a 3-0 loss, but at top right, I'm going to look at Heather Taggart long range, possibly as a national team goalkeeper, and this is just after your freshman year. So the Final Four appearance, you lose 3-0 to UNC. I guess I'm curious, as you're getting there, of your understanding, and we'll start small and go big, but just your understanding of yourself of, you probably have some confidence, you're competitive, but kind of seemingly pretty quickly you get put into this level of, hey, like, she's not just good, like she's one of the best here. How did your understanding of your game and yourself kind of evolve just that freshman year?
Yeah, I mean, your freshman year, you're really, trying to survive. I mean, I was really fortunate that year. I had a couple senior center backs in front of me that were, both probably 5'9", 5'10", and good, solid, leadership type players. And so, they were extraordinarily helpful in terms of kind of trying to maneuver through that season. That season was like an amazing run, right? You walk into college, and the next thing you know, you're ending up in a Final Four, and the path to that Final Four. Back in the day, you didn't have conferences, so people would get together and they would decide, are we going to let this team into the tournament? And when you're coming from the Midwest, you had to travel a lot, so we had to go really beat teams consistently on both coasts in order to even be considered for the tournament. And I think Greg did a really good job of recognizing, hey, we have to play these teams in order to get our shot. And so we were able to, and, I think that tournament run was a little blizzard snowstorm in Madison, which, is certainly, takes the tables and evens them a little bit. And then the second game, we went out to Massachusetts and played UMass, which is, the April Heinrichs kind of time frame. And they were like great. And literally second half, like we luckily got like a 1-0 lead. And then the second half, I mean, we're getting pounded, but the second half, there's a torrential rainstorm. And we, kind of battle through, balls just bouncing everywhere. It was just mass mayhem. And we win 1-0. I'm pretty sure it was 1-0. And then, you find yourself in the semis against, North Carolina during the time when they were on an absolute dominating tear, right? And that particular game, and I think what got people's attention, was that we were 0-0 at 75 minutes in that game, which was pretty awesome. I mean, and they were like you could feel the anxiety and the pressure and everything starting to build. And then we conceded a goal. And then once that happened, and don't get me wrong, we weren't playing a freestyle. We knew what we were up against. We were playing a 5-4-1 for God's sakes. We called it the egg because Greg was like trying to tell us what it was. So we jokingly called it the egg because it felt like you were all heavy at the bottom and pretty light at the top. And, but once you get behind one, I mean, you're in the semifinals of the national championship, you're going to open it up and try to go score. And then we conceded a couple more. But, that was the first time that I think I really felt like legitimized in my goalkeeping. Like I wasn't highly recruited. I was out of Omaha. I was lucky to get into college. I was lucky to get a scholarship and to have those opportunities that I had. And like I told you before, I felt like even that opportunity came with just that little bit of just the right amount of luck at the right time. Right. And then to, be standing, year and a half, 2 years later, in a semifinal game against North Carolina at North Carolina and playing well, was really, kind of an awesome kind of experience and really legitimized kind of what I was doing.
Yeah. When you say legitimized, do you mean from like you understanding yourself or for like, hey, I'm kind of now getting the credit that I already kind of knew I had?
Yeah. I mean, I think both. Like, you don't know where you stack up against everybody else until you go stack yourself up, right? And then, so me understanding, okay, yeah, this is real. I can do this. And then also having people, for the first time, because, I'd been in the ODP and to some national camps and some other things. Like the next year, after we went to Marquette, we were in Colorado at their training center. And, but I'm just like on the fringe, and you just feel like, okay, am I ever going to get like the big shot? Because when you're at that stage, what you also have to understand is like, when we're as athletes, we weren't necessarily dreaming of World Cups, right? Because there wasn't a World Cup, right? Yeah. I mean, we were dreaming of Olympics, right? Yeah. And so U.S. soccer also was a little bit associated with the U.S. The U.S. Olympic group, and so that's where a lot of our training was. And so you're in your mind thinking like, my dream is I want to play in Olympics, right? That was kind of that kind of thought process back then. And always feeling like, okay, well, it's not even in the Olympics yet. It wasn't even in the Olympics yet. Right. And so I'm in a sport that's not even going to have that chance. And I'm just on the fringe of the national team feeling like, I'm probably not going to get a chance, Yeah. But so it was the first time I felt like, okay, I could actually have a chance at this.
Yeah. Yeah. Did those challenges that you faced, whether it was the weather, whether it was playing against a top team, whether it was the lack of publicity, how did that affect you and your team? Because it seems like it helped. You mentioned kind of evening the tables, but it seems like it actually kind of helped y'all a bit of, hey, it's tough. Like it seems like y'all kind of get the edge, or you kind of get the edge a little bit. How did the team respond to, hey, rain's hitting in second half, or we're having a snowstorm? How did that impact the team?
Yeah, I mean, we were a bunch of kind of hard-nosed, Midwestern people. So, if it's, 30 degrees and snowing one day and, piercing rain the next, you're just kind of like, okay, just go play. And, I had some defenders that didn't mind getting down and dirty. They loved slide tackling. So you get them on the wet pitch, they were always pretty happy about that. So it was, I think we had a lot of like really hard-nosed, kind of Midwestern people that loved those sorts of challenges for sure.
Yeah. All right, today I am joined with the first ever four-time, I have to say this right, four-time All-American goalkeeper, Joan Schokow. I feel like there are a lot of awards we can talk about, but I feel like that's the one that I feel like for most people outside looking in who may not be familiar with Cortland State, may not even know where Cortland State is, and may not be familiar with the history there. When they hear the first ever four-time All-American, and you were in those first 4 years from 80 to 83, I feel like outsiders looking in maybe have the strongest connection. So I'm joined with Joan Schokow here. Joan, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to kind of talk about is the Dark Ages the good term to use? I just feel like your era is so undiscovered. I don't know. Is Dark Ages, is that the right?
It's kind of mystifying, isn't it? Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I love talking about it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm trying to go through this with a bit of a thread in connecting dots, but we had talked to Lori, who was in some sense a contemporary of your time, the first All-American goalkeeper, first team from thousands of miles away from you. I think in 1980, I'm going to guess there wasn't a whole lot of crossover from East Coast to West Coast. But we had talked to Lori back early in the year, and so I'm really glad to talk to you, Joan. And to go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was sorry to interrupt, except when we played UCLA.
Oh yeah. Well, I was gonna plug it. So if people haven't seen it, there's a wonderful documentary out there called Cortland to Colorado, which basically walks through that first national championship and kind of walking forward through this first. I'm trying to think how to describe it. Even this first gathering of all these players with really no structure up until this point. I mean, even if you, and I did this today, and I was kind of surprised to see it. If you Google NCAA Division I tournament, like the NCAA hadn't even taken over yet, and so it's just really kind of like in the moment, really pioneering in the truest sense. So if people haven't seen that documentary, it's free. It's out there. Joan is obviously in it. A lot of the players are in it. A wonderful job of photos are included, stories are included, and so we'll go ahead and plug that for you because I really enjoyed watching that. But before we kind of get into that first season, take me back, Joan, to those early days of, I think maybe the starting point, which would be helpful, would be that moment where you kind of realized, hey, like I like playing goalkeeper and other people maybe don't like playing goalkeeper as much, but it's because I have this. Like, what was the thing that helped you succeed at goalkeeper that maybe the other kids didn't have when you were first starting out?
Right. And so just a little quick background with that. I didn't play in any form of a soccer game until I was like 13 years old for in-house. Oh. Yeah, there was, I knew that I wanted to play in high school because back then you could play 4 sports. So I knew I had to play soccer first. And so I played in-house soccer because my background was not unfortunately, but I was my family had gone to a Catholic grammar school. So, back then all there was CIO basketball or something like softball or baseball. So soccer was foreign. But I was like, hey, I want to do this. And so when I was playing in-house soccer, the one thing that I loved, position I loved in softball playing it was shortstop. And so when there was any time that something had to happen, I didn't know I wanted to play goalkeeper, but hey, I like moving from side to side and stopping the ball. So, I touched on it a little bit in that little in-house soccer thing. And then I got to high school and honestly, playing, trying out as a freshman, I was like, I can play goalkeeper, but I do play the field. And unfortunately, I guess in hindsight, fortunately, or whatever, I ended up pulling my quad because we used to use these soccer balls that were, ancient. And I still remember this. I know this is terrible, but I had a great high school coach. But still, back then, she said, "Well, put heat on it." When I first injured it,
Okay.
and yeah, that didn't work. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so I couldn't run around a lot. But then I was like, I can play in goal. Well, I've done it,
Yeah.
and I kind of did it. But just to give you just a quick synopsis of it, I literally started every soccer season in high school saying I was going to play goal because I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. But then I always needed to be used on the field, and I was lucky enough that I had some backup goalkeepers in high school that they played instead of me. So
Okay.
I never quite knew that that was my position. And if you want to, when we get into college, I'll tell you another story about that. But yeah, I just was like, I like moving side to side. I like being a shortstop.
It seems like there's a really big common thread of players from this era just being so multi-sport and multi-position. I think, there was a time, maybe turn of the century, where things started getting a bit more specialized, where goalkeepers were, just the maybe overweight kid that kind of got pushed there and they didn't really let play, where, even you're playing other positions. And I think the idea of like, oh, goalkeepers like really aren't great with their feet, couldn't really kick a ball. It's like, well, at this time, like everyone's kind of having to play a little bit of everything, and maybe you might be a little bit better somewhere else. But that sort of Swiss Army knife sort of can do it, jack of all trades sort of thing is always very interesting, because now everything's getting so specialized. But
Right.
I really like that time. What was the first time you remember, whether in high school or even in college, that someone gave you kind of a tip about goalkeeping? Like, I imagine a lot of the goalkeeping that you were doing was just you figuring it out and trying this, trying that. But what was like a time that you remember, like, oh, this was actually very helpful that someone gave this to me?
Whew. Well, one thing that was, I guess, helpful for me in learning about soccer ball in high school and things is that my hometown of Spencerport, our boys team in the 60s and 70s and beyond, but in the 60s and 70s was quite good, okay, quite successful. And so here I have high school boys who are my classmates or maybe a little bit older, who are goalkeepers and things, and they would talk to me about some stuff. I remember I got my very first pair of gloves. That was an old pair from a high school boy, which are nothing like the nice padded gloves that we have today. It was like, stuff stuck on it, like a almost like an oven mitt, almost, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Kind of. So, I mean, it wasn't like tips as much as just being able to talk and enjoy the position, I guess, type of idea.
Yeah. And that was mostly with like the boys team of kind of talking to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because I feel like that's something else I've noticed of the information that, now I can go on YouTube, Instagram, and just see a ton of things about goalkeeping. Whereas in your time, you might have someone next to you can ask, but that's pretty much it. And so that sort of mindset of, hey, I've just got to kind of go figure it out. I might have someone I can ask over here, but for the most part, it's kind of on my end. How did Title IX feature into you? Now it's so celebrated as it should be, but I'm wondering, as you're coming up, did you have an understanding of what was really in front of you as far as college sports or the possibility, or was there buzz about it? I mean, when you were in the moment, Title IX was 72.
And I started high school in 76.
Okay, yeah. So it had been really a few years before things even really start turning. How did that, walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, so really interesting, I think, for my background was I was very lucky back when Title IX happened in 72. They started at my high school. Again, I was very lucky. Women's athletics, I think, I don't want to say 72 or 73, but actually the women's soccer team Spencerport won the first ever sectional title, and they just celebrated it again. Yeah, it was 73. And so for me, I didn't know there didn't used to be. You know what I mean? Like, I just knew I'm in grammar school and I know I want to go to this public high school and I want to play sports, and they're there. And then just to take it a little bit further, I didn't realize that there could be colleges that don't have teams, but Cortland started the varsity team in 78. So it's like, I don't know. I was just a happy accident that I was at a high school that had it. didn't know you weren't supposed to, or it wasn't common, and then went to a college that had, at that point in 1980, as much of an established program you could probably have for that early on, even though, there wasn't fancy uniforms or anything. And in high school, the same thing. We wore, I played soccer, volleyball, basketball, softball, and we kind of wore the same kind of shirts. And then the old shirts would go to the JVs, and then, that kind of thing. You wore the same uniforms and everything for each sport.
Yeah, so that insularness is always really fascinating. Of, you only kind of know what's in front of you, and the newspapers play a role in a little bit of that, but as far as you only kind of know what you know and what other places do or don't have, like you may not have any understanding of that. But I mean, that's awesome to hear that things were kind of moving, I guess, that aggressively, that forward at that time in your area. How did the recruiting process work? Or I don't know if that's the right phrase. How did you end up at Cortland? How did that work out?
Back again, it made me think about some stuff when just kind of getting ready to talk with you. Back when I was a sophomore in high school, I was in this class that, again, I was so lucky. One of our teachers in the science program at Spencerport developed this class called Science Applied to Sports, which, again, this is like 1977, right? Yeah. Like, who thinks about that? But he did. And I remember we would be learning about different things and VO2 max and some stuff. And then all of a sudden they put on a video about sports medicine and being an athletic trainer. And that just caught my eye like there was no tomorrow. So I'm like, I want to be an athletic trainer. So when you go in your junior and senior year and meet with your little high school counselors, you're like, who has something like athletic training? And Cortland popped up. And then I go, well, I really want to play soccer. And they're like, I think there's a team there too. And I went, okay.
When did you first? Yeah. When did you first cross over with your first head coach there, Anna Rush? So you get interest from Cortland, but did you not meet her until you got on campus? When did y'all first?
Right. Yeah. So there was, like I said, absolutely no recruiting process. It's just me choosing Cortland. I went down the summer before my freshman year to look at the campus with my parents. And I went over to, back then it was called PER building, to see if, I think I must have had to ask, who's the women's soccer coach? And they said, Coach Anna Rush. And I went to her office, and it was the summer, so she wasn't there. So I think I left a note on her door, or I gave it to someone.
Okay.
And so then she actually sent me, because I think I had my address on there, she sent me a typewritten letter saying, thank you so much for your visit. Yeah. The old typewriter, like this kind of, and not a computer. And it's funny, I still have the letter, and I was trying to find it, but I might be able to find it. Just telling me that, hey, thanks for coming to campus. This is when the tryouts start, because you got to remember back then too, there's no such thing as preseason. Yeah. So you show up for classes, and then you go to tryouts. So that's why, like, at that point, I don't know if our first game was until like mid-September, because you come to campus around Labor Day-ish, somewhere in there, and then you show up to tryouts from that point. Yeah.
And you obviously knew a little bit about the team, but there wasn't a national tournament until your freshman year, which is an amazing kind of lineup. I'm kind of curious, you're walking on as a freshman. I mean, I guess everyone's walk on, but you're in this environment, and I would imagine, as a typical freshman does, they kind of think, well, I'm a freshman, like, we'll see if I don't really know how good the seniors are going to be. Like, how did you approach, hey, like, you're confident in yourself, but also you're young and there's older people there. How were those first kind of moments of nervousness, or was there any?
Oh yeah, there was definitely nerves, and I'm an introvert, so that you can imagine. But again, I keep saying this, thinking about this, I was so lucky. The senior on the team, Heather Brendel, who's actually a big part of the documentary, was a Spencerport alum. Now, I didn't get to play with her. When she was a senior, she was on varsity and I was on JV. But we knew of each other. And so I walked right up to her and said, hey, Heather, can you introduce me to the coach? Because if you remember from the documentary, there was like almost 100 people there, because remember, there was no preseason. So whoever wanted to come try out, we all had to have our pictures taken, right? And we had to have numbers. So I walked up to her and said, kind of help me a little bit, which she did. And I was also lucky because two of my cross-town rivals, Gates High School, which was an excellent program, there was two freshmen coming in, Lori Palmer and Karen DeMarco, who I remember from playing against them in high school. That was our big rival in high school, was Gates. And we were all in it together too, you know what I mean? So we literally found each other and went to practice every day together, you know. But the kind of funny thing, when I walked and talked to Heather, I looked at Heather and I said, Heather, I don't know if I want to try out for field or goalkeeper.
Yeah.
I didn't know because, and thank goodness I picked goalkeeping.
Worked out.
I mean, it was totally, I had no idea how I was compared to other people, you know.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you have a specific moment, or, you know, can you recapture that feeling of coming in with this nervousness and then in a very short time, and 3 months later, you're named an All-American? What was there a moment where you're like, hey, like, actually, not only am I, you think you're talented and you're confident, but realizing, hey, like, I'm pretty good at this. Like, where was that moment of like, okay, actually, like, I'm not just another player, like, I'm actually kind of like a cut above?
So I think I started to see, so what had happened is during that process, there was only 3 goalkeepers there. And we all were freshmen.
Okay.
And during that whole kind of tryout process, none of us really rose to the top, I guess you should say. I don't know what, maybe it was nerves for me or just not knowing. I don't know. And so the first few games of the season, they would throw one of us in and then another one in and this kind of thing. But then I started to feel like, hey, I think I'm getting this.
Yeah.
Right. I think I don't know. I don't know what it was. What made me think. So I was like, I think I really want to be able to play.
Yeah.
Be that person. And so I still remember the game. It was our game against UMass, and another goalkeeper's in, and she was, a good goalkeeper, but she had got scored on a couple of times. So they put me in for the second half, and it just clicked. Yeah. I still got scored on. But I just started really playing. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the desire. I don't know if it was motivation from not playing, you know, because you come out of high school, you play all the time, that. And I don't know, it just clicked. And so that game started my career as all of a sudden 3 months later, I'm All-American.
Yeah.
I don't even know what it was.
Well, and those light bulb moments are really fascinating, because I think at the end of the day, you have to have the opportunity. Like, I always kind of wonder of, these players that don't really get a chance like that. At some point, you have to go fail, and you have to have the chance to fail. But then if you're given that chance and you're kind of expected to fail, like, that's actually a great example. Like, hey, like, okay, we'll give some minutes. The game's not going our way, whether the score gets worse or not, you're kind of like, okay. But when you actually are kind of can find success in those moments, especially, like, that's tough to do. But I think that kind of makes sense why there was a bit of a, not only confidence on your end, but some spotlight of like, hey, like, this one might be the
I might be able to do this.
Yeah. How would you describe your game as far as whether you want to compare it to those other goalkeepers or just, kind of on your own? When you think of how you played the position, was there something you're like, hey, this was my thing, or I really leaned into this, or because I could do this, I found success? How would you sum up your game?
I think it, my ability to control, like a coach on the field, I think has always been my strength. Kind of that. Even though I was a freshman, once I kind of knew what the game plan was, and I had wonderful people in front of me. Don't get me wrong, I had wonderful people in front of me. But learning how to kind of control that and help with that and talk and kind of be a leader on the field, I think that's always kind of set me apart. I mean, I'm vertically challenged. I'm 5'4" 3/4. I could touch the bar, but that was about, and obviously I had quick feet to go from side to side, but I think that was part of it. And this, the other thing I would say was this unbelievable determination that I hated the ball going in the net. I mean, I hated it. So I was going to do anything. I didn't care what it was. I was going to try to stop that ball from going in the net. I didn't care what it looks like. And I still never cared when I've been coaching. I don't care how you stop the ball from going in. Just stop it from going in.
Keep it out. Keep it out. How did you, because I do feel like there kind of gets a bit of a stigma, or maybe this is something that's overblown that doesn't quite exist, but a young woman who's willing to do whatever it takes to keep a ball from going in the net, is accompanied with, diving and getting cut up and getting dirty, muddy. And I found a wonderful picture from, I think it was a game at UConn. I'll pull it up here in a second. Yeah. You can see like everyone's just caked in mud, but as a goalkeeper, you're especially. So how did you feel any of that? Or was it just like, hey, this is just something I do, no big deal? Because not every young woman is diving around in the mud. How did that impact you?
Well, I think I was surrounded with women who were the same as me. Like, I could just tell you so many different stories about like it raining, and one of my teammates, I believe it was Terry Feebry, who was just tremendous sweeper. She got the Broderick Award and stuff, cutting like her hair in a game because it was getting in her eyes because of the rain or something. I mean, I was surrounded with people that was it, man. We just wanted to win. So me coming back muddy and being muddy in the dorm and all that, my roommate didn't always like it, but but I was like, hey, I think there was no stigma, I think, at that point.
That's cool. Let me go ahead and pull up this picture I have, and I'm trying to remember. So this would have been, unfortunately, you're not in it, but I don't quite know the scenario. It looks like the UConn goalie has been scored on. She's laying there on the ground, but it sounds like the goal has been called back. But then later,
right, that's actually me on the ground.
Oh, okay.
So, and the person on the right is my teammate, Lori Palmer. This is my junior year. We went up to UConn, and we're playing in the quarterfinals up in UConn on a very muddy day.
Yeah.
And the players on the left are UConn players, and they believe they just scored, and there's me on the ground going, I can't believe I just let them score in this important game and stuff. But then you see the UConn players, how they're turning, like they just were celebrating, but they were turning to the ref. Someone called either a foul or offsides, and the goal was disallowed. Wow. So we still had life. So we ended up losing, I think, in overtime. Because I know when the end of the game, and I went up to my head coach at the time, which was Chris Malone, and the athletic training staff. And at that point, I had long pants on, and it's muddy. And I said, guys, if we go into penalty kicks, you're going to cut these pants and make them shorts. Just know, because they're full of mud, I won't be able to move.
Yeah.
I remember having that conversation, and they were like, okay, we'll do that. But but we ended up losing in overtime. And the reason I know it's definitely me too is because I had a bandana on. I used to before they did pre-wrap. I would have loved pre-wrap to do that, but I had a bandana.
Well, part of the reason I wanted to show this picture, I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but I think the moment, unfortunately, like seeing you on the ground, I think anyone that's ever stepped in the goal, maybe not even for a game, but anyone's had that feeling where a ball's gone past them, whether it was their fault or not, like it's just a brutal feeling. And I think just from an artistic standpoint, this is a perfect capture, like how a goalkeeper feels. Because not only are you face down frustrated, but like, it's not like, you have that very brief moment that you're by yourself. And that's a really tough moment. And it sounds like, from the documentary as well, the team was very, very close. And I'm not saying that the team was abandoning you, but there's always that moment as a goalkeeper, you're like, oh man. So I'm sorry to make you relive that, but it was too good of a picture. But that first year, I guess I'm really curious of the expectations that kind of went on, because y'all's season was very, very up and down. That start of the year, it's win loss, and documentary kind of goes through that. But understanding, hey, we could be a national champion. When did that moment kind of click? I mean, was that always there, or was it kind of like, okay, well, we're kind of getting through the season, we'll see what happens? Like, was there an understanding, or when was the understanding, like, hey, we could be number one?
Well, we started, like we said, about, after the first 6 games, because we were 3-3, and we started then winning, starting like 7th game, and we started this momentum of winning, and again, you learn from the documentary, the 78 team and the 79 team were very used to winning. So all of a sudden we're losing in the beginning of 1980. But we started winning. And so I do remember the feeling that we're not going to lose. We're just going to keep it going, right? But just so you know, we knew there was a regional tournament, right? And it was called the EAIAW because, like you mentioned before, there was no NCAA sanction of women's athletics. It was AIAW. And so there was the Eastern AIAW, right? EAIAW. And we knew that was a goal, but we weren't sure we were going to get there because of the beginning of our season, right? So we knew that. And so then all of a sudden we get the 8th seed out of 8 teams, the last seed in that tournament. And we have to travel down to Princeton, play Princeton at night, and we end up winning 2-0. Then we go on to do the Final Four in Vermont and win both those games. We beat UConn in the final, so, but we're actually taking, because it was in University of Vermont, so it was in Burlington, and I think we were taking the ferry back across into New York State. And some of my teammates remember there was people like the coach talking a little bit about maybe a national tournament. We never even knew it existed yet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, because it was this invitational type thing. Yeah. And then, we get back and we get called in to this office. And again, this is on the documentary on that Monday, and said, and Leslie says it beautifully on the documentary, hey, there's some good news and some bad news. The good news is there's this national tournament. It's in Colorado. The bad news is we don't have any money to get out there, or we can't get out there. We can't fly. And all of a sudden that's where the whole thing started. Like, we'll get there, but we didn't even know.
Wow.
We didn't even know. I did ask a coach from the University of Rochester, Terry Gurnett. He's actually a Spenceport guy too. And I remember asking him, because he was coaching U of R. He was a longtime coach of U of R, very successful. I remember asking him, because I was part of his interview for the documentary. I said, did you hear about it? Did you know there was a national tournament? He goes, there was some talk during that 1980 season that Stephen Paul from Colorado wanted to have this national tournament. We knew nothing. Absolutely nothing as athletes. All of a sudden we're still playing. We keep going. And I was a freshman going, cool, all right.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine it at this point, the idea of pioneering. I mean, I think a lot of people just kind of boil that down at, well, you're first. And it's like, well, yes, I mean, that's part of it. But things are developing, they're unraveling, they're building. Some things are, I mean, the AIAW that only existed for a couple of years before the NCAA took over. Like, things are coming and going very, very quickly. I'm sure at this point you've also talked to your teammates or classmates and realized, oh, hey, like, the athletics that I had or the support I had in high school maybe wasn't quite as common everywhere else. Like, you're kind of seeing all this like ebbing and flowing. I can only imagine the excitement of, you go through that regional tournament and you're kind of like, okay, we did well. Oh, wait, there's this next thing. That must have been exhilarating. I am looking at, and whoever has made the website that has a documentary, it's called Two Red Cortland State. Wait, my dyslexia is kicking in. Oh wait, Two Red Cortland State Vans. That's what it is, .com, which has all the schedules, pictures, wonderful. But I'm noticing the schedule. The regional tournament, you played 3 games in 5 days, but then the final tournament, you played all those 3 games in 3 days. Was there any sense of like tiredness, or was it just like, hey, this is what we do? You play games back to back to back, no big deal. Like, how did the driving on top of that was? That just seems kind of crazy.
I think I don't remember anyone saying they retired.
Yeah.
I don't remember everyone saying, "Oh God, we got to play again." I think we were just, "Let's go." We're resilient, right? And it was some snow on the ground. It was cold a little bit. It was definitely cold, but a little bit of snow on the ground. And we're like, "Hey, we're from New York State. Let's go, Central New York State at that point, Cortland. Let's go play. We played in the snow before, And I think like I said, just this group of resilient, anything we can do to win a game type of women that I was just so lucky.
Yeah.
My freshman year, not saying I didn't have it the rest of my time, but my freshman year class was, pretty special.
Yeah, I can see that.
Freshman season, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. How did so y'all win the national championship that year? I'm curious, those next 3 years, they're changed. So you obviously y'all don't repeat, but also you have coaching changes as well. I mean, yeah, and you finished those 4 years with 3 different coaches.
3 different coaches, yeah.
How did those next 3 years? I mean, was it disappointment, or again, the pioneering aspect? Like, there's no promise of tomorrow. You're just kind of like moving through. How did those last 3 years?
So the win of our freshman year was awesome, and Cortland was very gracious at honoring us and banquets and this and that, even into the spring semester and that. And then Coach Rush says she's going to step down, because she kind of just did it to be a good person. So there was a program and stuff like that. So at that point, the logical thing that Cortland did was take our assistant coach and bump him up to head coach. And I'm really not going to go into a big detail about it, but that turned out not to be a very good thing. So my sophomore year, from mistakes that he made paperwork wise and other things, we still had a good season, but I think if you talk to anyone who played during that time, we kind of ignored 1981. Yeah, I mean, I honestly can't tell you even like a good memory from that year. It was, and again, I'm not going to go into it, but let's just say, it was not a good thing.
Yeah.
But then in 82 and 83, we had Chris Malone come in, who was from the University of Virginia. And he brought in a tremendous amount of soccer knowledge. It was the first time all of us, because we, even though we came from different high schools and had different coaches, some of them, played some good summer programs in a sense. And this was Empire State games too, but again, that was only a short period. But here we are now finally having someone who knows soccer. Yeah. And he really did. I mean, I believe he brought knowledgeable soccer to all of the Northeast and upstate in New York and everything. We used to travel around as groups with him to give coaching demonstrations and stuff like that when he was that. So he brought a tremendous amount of knowledge. And so that's when, like, my junior year was the first time we had preseason. Okay. Never heard of that before. He didn't know a lot about goalkeeping per se, but he knew enough as being an intelligent man. He gave us like some stuff from Joan Matchnick. That was my first time ever hearing about Joan Matchnick and that kind of thing. But all of a sudden, my junior and senior year, we started to come about. Because you got to realize, when he came in as my junior year, there was no recruiting from my sophomore year. Yeah. Right, because that coach had to step down.
Yeah.
So he just was with the people that we had. So we had some of our good freshman class and carrying on to now juniors and things, and some good people. Yeah. So that's why the UConn game was like kind of a big thing.
Okay.
So we made it to the quarterfinals, and I do have another quick story about.
Yeah.
But then my senior year, he was traveling the country recruiting. He brought in people from Colorado, from Canada, Washington, D.C., people from the WAGs area. And now we got like a team. And we were ranked 4th in Division I the whole season, but unfortunately lost in the quarterfinals again, right before the Final Four down in Florida. to George Mason 2-1. We hosted in the snow and lost 2-1. So it's kind of, with that thought process, I've always been a little jealous of the seniors from my freshman year that they got that national championship, because, man, after winning it your freshman year, you just want it bad the whole rest of the time. You know, but we had a tremendous program. But but what I was going to say about my junior year is our coach, Chris Malone, had ties with Virginia and with UNC and with different people down south, and we went down and played in a tournament in Florida during the season for the University of Central Florida. And the second game of this tournament, or I don't know, some point of the tournament, we had to play UNC, and we ended up winning 2-1. Unbelievable. It was like, so like from years on, every time they would show the UNC record and they have a loss, we always point, that's us. We're one of those losses. We might only have a few, but we're one of them.
Yeah, that's awesome. In the documentary, I love that y'all got a number of kind of more modern, popularly people, but Anson's in it, and he kind of talks about going to the national championship, or that first year where y'all won the national championship, and UNC got there, did okay, but didn't really progress. And then he gets back, and then he kind of gets asked a question like, "What does it take to succeed?" And he's, I forget his answer, but something about money. And they're like, "All right, you got it." And so, kind of overnight, UNC is transformed into having a ton of money. And I think it kind of becomes one of those haves, have-nots sort of thing, where UNC just gets this massive target where they kind of become a rival for everyone in this area. Everyone really wants to beat them, and those losses become really important. Because not only are they good, but they're getting a lot of funding that no one else is getting, and most places aren't even close to getting. And so that's funny to hear. I'm going to talk to Jen Reno, who played at Notre Dame on Friday, and spoiler, but I think 20% of the goals she ever gave up in her 4 years, she started every game, but 20% were from UNC. It was kind of like just cool. So how did I don't want to jump ahead too much, but y'all end up moving to Division III, but also as started, I'm guessing athletic scholarship didn't really exist at this time.
So we were, my entire time, we were considered Division, I guess you would call it, we would have a mixture of Division I / Division III by today's standards, but we were just playing soccer teams, right? So we could be playing UConn one day, and then the University of Rochester the next day, and then Hartwick another day, and then Harvard another day, or UCLA or whoever. So we just had this, you just played. And then my junior and senior year, we still had a Division I, primarily Division I, but again, we didn't have a lot of money. So sure, we had to play schools that were closer, like I said, programs that were established, like University of Rochester, Hartwick, a little bit of St. John Fisher. William Smith was just at the beginning, but they weren't established yet. And then my last season was 83, and then I believe 84 and 85 still went on to be that same kind of idea as Division I. But during that time, our head coach, Chris Malone, had the forethought that there's no way Cortland's going to be able to keep up, because we're not going to be able to get money, right? So he started the whole ball rolling of introducing the Division III National Championship, which started, I believe, in 86.
That sounds
so. And Cortland was always ranked number 1 the whole season. Cortland hosted, but they ended up losing U of R one. But that's how they went on then, how it went from Division I and then Division III, and then later in the years, Division II started having one. But he was the impetus behind saying, we're not going to be able to keep up. You're just not. Sure.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, sure, it's a good program. It's not a very expensive school, but still, it's hard to recruit when other people are getting money.
Well, I can see that. How do you look back on that time? Because y'all were exclusively, or there was an exclusive time where y'all were competing against Division I's, which 5-ish years. Whereas now that, they might have some preseasons here and there, but for the most part, D3 is kind of hovering their own, D2s and they all kind of in their own pockets. How do you look back on that time of like, man, like we were competing, but now my school, which has also changed their name as well, like it's a lot of changes happened from when you were a student to now. Like, how do you bridge those two very different eras?
I think it's just, we were lucky enough to be able to do that, but I just think of with Cortland, I just think of it with pride all the way through. Doesn't matter if we had a different experience than the athletes after me, but there's just so much Cortland women's soccer pride, with that, that, you never really thought about it that way. Now, obviously, that for 28 years, I was the women's soccer coach here at SUNY Brockport, and that's a SUNY school in the same conference as Cortland. So I didn't want them to win too much. Yeah. I wanted to win, and of course my team wanted to win. But I always have said to anyone, any recruit that I have or anything, I always say if they're looking at Cortland, I'm like, hey, my two favorite colleges, Cortland and Brockport. Cortland and Brockport.
Yeah, and I think this time, like the regionalness, it really has, well, compared to now, is really dissipated. I mean, the idea of like a regional rival like still exists for sure, but I mean, we'll get into the Empire State Games here in a second. But I just think even the in-conference stuff, like in the 80s, 90s, like that was a really big thing. Whereas now, conferences are they can span the whole country. Like they can form and fall apart very, very quickly. So that sort of like of moment, not only of time, but also of this like, hey, we're in this space here, and like this is what we have, and the Cortland pride that comes out, is probably I would assume much more of focusing on what you have in front of you as opposed to thinking of like, oh, what division are we, or what what is this? You're like, you're just looking at kind of what's in front of you. So that. Do you remember finding out you won an All-American award? Because when I talked to Lori, she didn't even know the award existed beforehand. And then she made it sound like her coach was like, hey, you kind of won this award. But even the coach didn't seem really up to date. So did you even know All-American was a thing? Like, what did you know before you got it, and how did you find out?
Yeah, so I did not know. And so the NSCAA, right, back then, not the USC, but the NSCAA, had their annual conference and All-American banquet in January, right? So this is January now of 1981. And I had some Spencerport people again who were part of the NSCAA in different forms, right? So they were regular people to attend, some kind of administrators. Again, very lucky that again my town was doing that. And they came back and to Spencerport, and I don't even know how they must have, I don't know, they knocked on my door or saw me or something and said, hey, Joan, you realize you made All-American? I'm like, what are you talking about? And I had the envelope, and it had the little fold-up sheet that said, see, there's your name. You're All-American. And I went, oh, okay. What happens with that? And I'm like, okay. So then all of a sudden I got a thing in the mail, a certificate in the mail. I'm like, behind me. I'm like, okay, I guess I made All-American. I mean, I didn't know the other goalkeepers. I didn't know. I think I might have known one of them, if that was a UConn one or something. I can't remember. But I was like, okay, that's how I found out, because someone from my town was at the banquet.
That's funny. How did you? And I'm not trying to throw a trick question at you, but I'm wondering, you win an All-American award, you win another one, you end up 4 in 4 years, and you win a national championship your freshman year, but then that sophomore year is very a sour experience, and then junior year comes along and there's some progress. I'm curious was there ever any thought of, hey, maybe going to another school would be an option for me, or was that not? I mean, I know the transfer portal didn't exist then, but right. I guess I'm curious of how did you as a young 18, 19, 20-year-old kind of navigate that, having individual success where the team is now kind of having a bit of a dip at certain points?
Not in the slightest, not a chance. No, I would have never transferred out of Cortland.
Yeah.
It was just a tremendous, tremendous experience, and I just wanted that same team to win. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
I wanted to win another one. I wanted to win another national championship for my team. I knew there could be a big capability of maybe doing it, and like I said, our senior year, our team was pretty darn good, and things. But no. I mean, especially when we had such a positive coaching change. I don't think I was thinking about leaving.
Yeah. No,
and I don't know if I ever thought about transferring like as an option anyways. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we had some people transferred into Cortland. Two of the greatest players, Heather Brendel and Terry Febrey, transferred in from other colleges. They were somewhere else their freshman year, then came in their sophomore year, and then finished out at Cortland. But I didn't think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I can understand not thinking about it because I can probably pull up Twitter right now and I can see someone announcing, hey, well, maybe not this time, but I've seen it early in the year where they're announcing they're just going in the portal. They haven't announced that they're going somewhere. They're just, I'm entering the portal. It's a totally different era now. Yeah, I think ultimately having the care to continue to contribute to your little, plot of land of like, hey, I want this to be better. If you can have that care, I think that's where the transferring does factor in. If you don't have the care to actually invest and stick with it, then I think that's where the transferring kind of comes up a bit. So I can see that. All right. Well, you need to educate me a little bit on the Empire State Game. So my understanding, I did not know this thing existed until I started talking to you in our first call. And I also, I'll plug her because we have a mutual connection here, but Tanya Vogel, who was the former athletic director at GW, y'all have a connection as well, and y'all played together. So walk me a little bit of, for someone who does not understand what the Empire State Games is, I know a little bit, but I'm going to guess some listeners don't know maybe at all. Walk us through the Empire State Games and then connect me a little bit with Tanya, because I've got a great story that she told me that I'll share here in a second. But
well, the Empire State Games, I believe, if they were started in 78 or 70, I believe 78. And for me, it's soccer. I mean, I can't tell you for every sport. There was two divisions, a scholastic and an open. And you were in scholastic if you were still in high school. You were open, trying out for open if you were going into your freshman year in college and beyond. I didn't even know the games existed the very first year. And then I saw that some people around my area were playing in what they called the Empire State Games. And I was like, I had a little bit of FOMO right there going, wow, I didn't know this existed. But I want to be a part of it then beyond, after that. And so I then tried out, and I believe I played 1 year scholastic and then the rest of the time open. But it was this where you divide the state up into these regions, and we were considered Western, and then there was Central and, and Hudson Valley and Long Island, New York City, and then upstate a little bit more, Albany area. And they would have these sports, and they'd make it just like the Olympics. We had big opening ceremonies at places, and different people. I remember Mary Lou Retton coming once, and but it was big opening ceremonies, and you walked in with your region, with your area, and I think fireworks too and stuff like that, and then you just played, and it all depends what kind of format they had. They had formats where you were two groups, like for us, or there was formats where you played everybody later on, but then you had bronze medal and gold medal games at the end of that 5-6 days. Well, not even 4 or 5 days. So you were playing every day, and you got to stay in the dorm and eat, dorm food. And like I said, there was a tremendous experience for us who were younger, who didn't do, there was barely anything called premier or travel soccer, where you actually went somewhere and stayed overnight as a team. So this experience, when you're like 17 years old, 16, 17, 18 years old, was just so much fun, so great. And our team was successful. My entire time playing, we either won a gold medal or a silver medal, depending. Our biggest rival was Long Island.
Yeah.
Which you can imagine, because Long Island at that point was very established in soccer as well. And, you know, Western New York here, we encompassed Rochester and Buffalo and South there. So, and then Long Island, that would seem to be the biggest, the most experienced regions at that time, early years and things. But I remember playing, and myself and Megan McKenzie was, she had played at U of R, University of Rochester, and we were considered the grandmas as captains. And I think we were only like 24, 25, not even. You know what I mean? But there's articles in the Rochester paper about the grandmas lead the team or something.
That's
too
funny. That's too funny. I'll pull this.
So it really was So I don't know what year it was.
This was 86. So
86,
was it basically the same? I mean, did y'all get a good retention of players from year to year, or was it kind of like new players every year? How did the team's consistency stay together from year to year?
There was some consistency, but there definitely was new people, because you only have 16 on the team and then some alternates, 4 alternates.
Yeah.
And the rule back then was you could have no more than 6 people from one college team.
Oh.
Or high school team. So, not exactly in my era, but the era a little bit after me when I got done playing, because this is probably one of the later years for me in 86. No, probably, I don't know, 88 maybe. University of Rochester was doing so well, right? Because remember, I told you they won the national championship in 86, won it again in 87, and then were very successful and stuff. They couldn't have any more than 6 players be on the team, and so that was kind of, you know, it wasn't during my time, but during that time. But there were some of us that did it year after year.
Yeah.
And then, like I told you, then I got to coach, but I didn't coach my region. I had to travel to Syracuse and coach the Central region because the Western coaches wouldn't step down.
That's funny.
But I wanted to keep coaching. I wanted to do coaching and be a part of that experience.
When I saw Tanya on Sunday, and she told me that I don't know what year it was, but she tore her ACL in a game. And of course, at this point, she doesn't. She's never torn an ACL before. She doesn't quite understand, but she kind of felt something, and she had this interaction with you on the field where you with your athletic training background of like, you're like, hey, you need to go see someone, and she was kind of like, oh, okay, I guess, I don't know, but she was on the field with you when that happened. But she also mentioned that with the Rochester Ravens, y'all played against the national team at one point in front of 1,000 fans. What year was that?
So that happened in 97, July of 97. And that is it's a crazy thing. So in 96, so at this point, I'm still playing some summer outdoor soccer. I'm playing indoor soccer, still kicking around. And Jill McCabe, who at this point was a University of Rochester graduate, plus she was the assistant coach at U of R, wanted to start this better team to be part of this league, and at that point, it was kind of the highest you could go. At that point, kind of semi-professional, if you want to say, no money involved. But she started this Rochester Ravens team in 96, and we had some success. We did some good things. And I remember her talking to us during the indoor saying, hey, do you want to be part of this team? And I'm like, okay, I'll give it a try. So I played in 96. And then she started talking about, she had seen that Tony DiCicco, back then, the women's national team coach, said that he wanted to start getting the team out to be playing some more games, maybe not necessarily different countries, but because at that point, I remember this is pre-99 winning the World Cup and all of that. I mean, obviously they won in 91, but, and so she's like, got it in her head, like, hey, I want to see if they'll play the Ravens.
Yeah.
And I had a connection with Tony because he's a goalkeeper, and I worked his Soccer Plus goalkeeping camps through all that. And a little side note, the very first soccer camp I ever went to, I was actually coached. I never went to a soccer camp until I was old enough to coach.
Interesting. Yeah.
There was no soccer camps back then. So at the NSCAA convention in January of '97, she's like, we knew Tony was going to be there, and we, I don't know if I contacted him beforehand or something, but we set up a little meeting between Jill and I and him, and saying, hey, do you want to come to Rochester? We can try to figure this out. We'll do that. And so then there was lots of talk back and forth. It was like, are we going to do it? Or is our area big enough for it? What are we going to do? And it was like a whirlwind, but it turned out to be the most amazing experience. We actually, field-wise, which is, again, so lucky, we played here. We played at SUNY Brockport because we have a 10,000-seat football stadium. It wasn't my game field, but it was, they didn't have lights back then. It wasn't turf back then like it is now. But we had this 10,000-seat stadium, and we had ample parking because of our campus and stuff. And so we hosted it.
Yeah.
And got to play the women's national team, which was just crazy. And here I am, 36 years old, standing in goal. I got to start against the U.S. national team. I played terribly. They peppered me like there was no tomorrow, but who cares? Who freaking cares?
Yeah.
In my college, it's just this amazing experience, and then I got out, I stopped at halftime, and we let the other people get in because you got to be able to play against the national team, and just crazy.
Yeah.
You got to do that.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, 97, forgive me for asking, you would have been how old, in your 30s?
I was 36, I think.
Wow.
35, 36, and I was playing.
I mean,
that was definitely when I kind of stopped playing for the Ravens after that season. I go, I can't do any better, competitive-wise. Now, did I still kick around and do things? Sure. But I pretty much at that point stopped kind of playing in goal, too. I don't know if you've ever had that happen when you're just kind of playing for fun. I go, guys, I don't want to really play. I mean, if I have to play in goal because we don't have a goalkeeper, I'll play every once in a while. But definitely outdoor goal. I'm like, wait, I am way too old to be diving on summer grass that's not watered and it's rocks or something, Indoor, a little smaller goal, I'll play a little bit if you need me. But I kind of took on like not coaching, like, hey, I'll run subbing.
No, I get it. All those times you've hit the ground, the way I tell even my young goalkeepers now, like, they just stack. And right now, like, you're young, and, you're going to bounce back, but, like, they don't really go away. Like, they're all just amounting. And at some point, like, that stack's too high, and, everyone kind of hits a different point for themselves. So I totally get that. But I am very impressed playing into your 30s. I mean, of all the people in really the world, I guess, that were playing in their 30s, before the turn of the century, I mean, especially goalkeepers, that's very, very rare. I mean, even now you see a lot of goalkeepers still retiring, 27, 20, 29, like they don't even really get into their 30s. So I guess I'm curious of that time. I mean, so you come out of kind of a really interesting time with Cortland where, you obviously have success, and the national team starts up in 85. I know we talked a little bit on the phone before this call, but what was your connection with the national team as far as just from your own point of view of, hey, I'd like to try out, or I knew about this, or I found out about this, or, how did you watch them and think, hey, I could do that? Or was there kind of a gap of like, okay, like, I know I'm good, but that's not really my tier. Like, how did you see the national team in relation to your own skill and ability?
Like I said, I wish desperately back when it was starting, we could have found out at Cortland about it. Like I said, there was some whisper of, hey, there's something possibly going on down at UNC. There could be a tryout, but you got to get down here in a couple of days, and again, like we said, Cortland, it's a blue collar school. We don't have any money to get, personally to get down there, so you kind of just were like, oh, and so we never quite had the chance to do it. And I think after that moment, I didn't think about it anymore that I could have been there. I wish I could have been that point. I'm not saying I would have been successful. I'm not sure, but it would have been nice to see. You know, I think especially, you know, like I told you, I'm vertically challenged.
Yeah.
You know, if I was going up against 5'10" goalkeepers, you know, that might be something.
Yeah. Well, it does feel like a lot of the goalkeeping, and maybe just because, again, going back to the early days where you're playing a lot of sports, but it does feel like a lot of the goalkeepers through the 80s and 90s, even with the national team, weren't that tall. I mean, I'm trying to think.
Right.
Amy Allman was
right.
You know, like you've got a lot of these. I mean, Harvey maybe has a few inches on you, but she's not 6 foot. You know, so yeah. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't know. It just feels like a lot of the goalkeeping greats at this time were people who just played a ton of sports, and you know, maybe because they played so many sports, or maybe because of their size, they could play so many sports, and that's how they got into goalkeeping. I don't know. But you know, I hear you on just wanting the opportunity. I think even now, I mean, I kind of touched on it earlier, just the opportunity to even try and to, I think even the most entitled kids today, if they see someone that's better than them, they're like, okay, you know, like they might not be so open about it, but you know, for the most part, kids and people are really good about saying, hey, that person's better. Now, if it's close, you're going to want to go compete, but if there's ever a gap, you know, but people want to know, have that chance, you know. So
I don't know if I can tell you a little side story. It's not quite about me. I don't know if Tanya mentioned. I know I mentioned her. I don't know if Tanya mentioned my wife Megan, because they were teammates too. Us both with her. Megan was a field player. She had gone to U of R. She was younger than me, but she knew she had this inner desire to want to be able to try out for the national team. And when she graduated from college in '92, she ended up going over to Germany, because you mentioned Mary Harvey, so I wanted to bring that up. Mary Harvey was the first person to ever go to Germany from the U.S. to play, and my wife Megan was the second.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she played over there for 2.5 years, played with the big greats like Bettina Wiegmann and all these people from Germany, and had a tremendous career over there, as when people weren't doing it, you know, that much, you know what I mean, not going abroad. When she came back, and I was having, at this point, she had said to me, this is, you know, back before we were married and together and stuff, but she had said, hey, I know you're meeting with Tony. Can you just mention, you know, I did play professionally over here and all this stuff, and see if she could ever get a tryout. And she ended up having one, but she was injured. So it turned out to be kind of a sad thing. But because you mentioned the Ravens game, I wanted to mention this. She played extremely well against the U.S. national team in the Ravens game. Tony got a hold of her after the game and said, I might be trying to start this, what do you call it? Brainstorming tour to try to get a professional league going. Because remember, there was no WSL yet, right, till after the '99 World Cup. Do you want to be a part of it? And because she had played so well, and he knew a little bit about her background, and so, but the league the brainstorming tour never took off. But it kind of just shows you that idea of opportunity, though, like what happened because, you know, she, you know, back then she could knock on the door to say, hey, can I get a tryout? She only had a couple weeks notice and was coming off an injury. You know, she's like, oh my God, my one and only chance. But then that brainstorming, you know, brainstorming tour was a possibility and stuff. So it's kind of like you've been saying, it's that opportunity.
Well, and it's such a finite one too, because you know, whether even take the injuries away, like you're not going to always be at the top of your game. Like your ability to play is so short. So just have that chance. You know, 97 isn't that far away from the league starting, but also it kind of is far away because 2 years. I mean, that's like life happens, you know. So, so I hear you on that. Well, let's. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I just wanted to throw in that side. It's like it's always connected, right? Small world.
Yeah. Well, when I saw Tanya on Sunday, we were talking. I was just laughing. I was like, of course, you know, she knows Joan. Like, everyone seems to. It's such a small circle. Everyone's got some connection somewhere. No, that's funny. Well, let's finish on this, and we'll do 3 questions here. 2 of them are kind of related, but this will kind of close us off here. But the first 2 questions are memories that you will keep forever, but one of them is on the field, one of them is off the field. So somewhere in the soccer world, what is a memory that happened on the field? You're like, man, I'm never going to forget that. That's going to be stuck with me forever. And then what's something off the field that's still in the soccer world that you're like, man, that's just going to stay with me for as well. So those are your first 2 questions.
I think because I've been very fortunate, it's hard to pick just one memory, but I'm going to pick a couple, if that's okay. That's fair. So it was a tremendous experience when we were down in Florida, University of Central Florida, and I told you I had that crosstown rivals. We were freshmen together. Now we're juniors together. Lori Palmer, and she was my center back. And we're playing UNC. And, you're already kind of nervous to play them. And I went to do a goal kick, and I kicked it right to a UNC player, and they scored. We're like, oh, God. But then we scored. And I remember her running back to me going, oh, my God, we're tied with UNC, right? And then we're playing the game. Then we score, and she runs back to me. He's like, "Oh my God, we're beating UNC!" And Chris Malone, our coach, was so almost nervous. He laid down behind the bench because it was just so mind-boggling. Yeah. And what was kind of really fun with that tournament too. So we didn't win the tournament. We ended up losing another game, but we came in third. They had an all-tournament team, and I was lucky enough, and so was my college teammate Lori, who I was mentioning. But the unique thing is a University of Central Florida player named Michelle Sedita was also part of it, right? She was my teammate at Spencerport. So here we are, 2 little town people down in Florida, and we both get on this all tournament team, playing. It was kind of crazy. So that running back and forth, obviously the last couple minutes of the national championship game, Leslie Archer is going like this, and I won't tell you the exact language, but she's like, we're blanking national champions, and Terry Feebry, who's the center back, going, Leslie, they still could come down. She's like, who cares? We're winning 5-1, we're champions, I would say that. And then playing here against the women's national team. I mean, you can't differentiate between those 3 things on the field, that those are moments that, are just the interaction with your teammate type of thing too. You know what I mean? Those first 2 moments was just having so much fun with your team, and experiencing that joy. And so was the next part off the field?
Something, whether it's relationships, just a happenstance, a connection, something before or after a game, maybe even a coach, a fan, anything, just literally off the field. I mean, you kind of did one a little bit, but if you have another one, you can share that for sure.
I don't know. There's just so many. I mean, I'm lucky to be married. So
there we go. Yeah.
Plus right there. Plus. I mean, this experience coaching here at SUNY Brockport for 28 years, I mean, tremendous. So it's not really a moment as much as just having that opportunity. I had wonderful, wonderful athletes. We never got to win a national championship, but they would run through a wall for me, and I will never. I mean, just tremendous people, and the administration here, and my assistant coaching staff. I mean, it's just unbelievable type of stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think the identity of how soccer infuses with our identity, especially you coming out of your era, I just find really, really fascinating. Of even if people step away from the game or if they keep coaching, what they appreciate from it almost often always is their relationships. And you just mentioned y'all didn't win a national championship, but the number of wins and losses is always going to come a far distant second to, the connection and the effort and what those players gave you. I'm sure you could remember a lot of the score lines, but there's probably a lot of score lines you've probably forgotten from all those, they just kind of wash away. But you remember, hey, that player, really, gave me this. And so that goes a long ways. So that's very cool. Very cool. Yeah. All right. Well, last question here, and this will I think sum up everything, and really kind of intentionally ambiguous. So go any direction you like with it. But what does goalkeeping mean to you?
Everything. I mean, that position now that I kind of look back, was suited for me. That, I like being in control. So I like that idea of being in the back in control. I liked, like I said, I just did not want that ball to go in the net. And since the days of not playing, or I should say I was doing this even before when I was still playing, but the idea of teaching it to young people and talk goalkeeping, I love all that. Like, I would run just a little goalkeeping camp, just for the small towns around me here at Brockport. Not a moneymaker. I've never ever wanted to profit off things. I just gave the money back to the program. I never took a dime for anything. But it was just goalkeeping, trying to get that joy that I have about it, and trying to carry that on to some young females and things, and males, but mostly females. Is who I coached and things. So, and stuff.
No, that's awesome. I think I'm sure a lot of this got instilled from you very early, but from the documentary, hearing y'all talk about your coach Anna Rush, and just, yes, there are people that came along afterwards with maybe a little bit more soccer knowledge, but when you have someone who cares and invests into what you have, that is so contagious. And whether it is a 9-year-old learning to play goalkeeping for the goalkeeper for the first time, or a college student, trying to win a national championship, when you've got someone who's investing into what you're about, very excited. And that also kind of goes forward from there.
Coach Rush was just the most amazing person. And she was the first person that exposed me to the relationship business, but now I know, coaching wise, I think that was kind of my strength. I didn't, like I said, we didn't go on to win. I mean, we had some very good accolades, very good seasons. I would never complain with that. But I think my strength there was, and some of that was learning from Coach Rush, was the relationships. That's what it's all about. It's about you don't coach a sport, you coach the people sitting in front of you, and what kind of relationships and bonds do you provide for them, and experiences that you provide for them. And that's what I'm a coaching educator now, because I'm at the college level and I'm still a professor. I'm the coordinator of the coaching minor here at SUNY Brockport. And so in my courses, that's what I talk about. The X's and O's are like this much. It's everything else, and the relationships that you have, that's what's going to do it. It's a relationship game.
I remember one of my first coaches, when I started coaching, one of my first coaches, I was really frustrated at the formation we were playing. And that was 15 years ago. And now I'm just like, how silly, of doing everything else was really good there. The relationships, the vibe, we were in a really good spot, but I was caught up in the formation, the X's and O's. And now I'm looking at like, yeah, you're absolutely right. The teeny bit of X's and O's, it's not nothing, but it's not the most important. There's something way, way more important than that. So, no, that's very good. Well, Joan, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it. And I thank you for letting us go into the weeds about this. I know sometimes these conversations, I feel like that from your era, a lot of players are, in my opinion, a little too humble at times, of like, it's almost like I'm pulling teeth trying to get information and stories out. So thank you for sharing everything. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's always fun to talk about.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let me go ahead and end the recording here, and then